Happy Sunday morning to you. I hope that everybody's having a great day. There's been some speakers on this morning early, and I know that I'm coming on after them, and hope that you enjoyed their lessons, and all praising God and trying to study more and more about God's Word. I know that you're not going to be able to see all this probably really good, but hopefully you'll get the gist from this. This is something that I have done for the church a couple of times, and try to explain stuff to people to try to encourage them that God is coming back, that I promise you He's coming back. This is the kind of thing that we had talked about last Wednesday night. That I worry about people that has this idea or thought that, well, He's not here. Where's He at? He's delayed His coming. Well, He's coming. I promise you He's coming. I just think it's much sooner than what people have tried to make it out to be. I've had people really argue with me over the fact of, they just don't want to talk about it. It's what it truly boils down to, the fact that God's coming back, and we're in to me, the end times right now. And I can give you proof for that. Now, there's a big, huge argument over this, and has been for, thousands of years, over whether or not the Bible is specifically talking about what is to come or what has already happened. I'll give you the reason behind that. As in Matthew chapter 24, He speaks, and one of the things He says is that this generation will see the end. And that's something that Jesus has said. And when He says that, people take that one specific verse, and look at it and think, well, this has already all happened. And it happened in the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. Jerusalem was destroyed twice, one time by the Babylonians in 500 and the second time by Rome in 70 A.D. But now remember, Revelations was actually wrote in 95. So when you look at that, why would you write some of the stuff that was wrote in Revelations years and years after the destruction of Jerusalem? Is He foretelling the things that happened that they know? No. We need to look at some of these verses real close. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll talk to anybody. I've got people that are on both sides of the fence in this. But through this timeline, I think it helps out in being able to see really what I'm talking about. Now, I'm going to go through this and try to show you some things and try to help you to understand, what I'm talking about as far as how this is set up in time. And it kind of gives you a good reasoning in it. So first, I want to point out this. And this is like, I'm going to go through the time here, and I'm going to be turning and looking at this. So I hope you can hear me. But let's look. All right, let's start off at 8,000 BC, where they claim that the wall of Jericho was there at 8,000. Dates back to 8,000 BC. The next thing up, you've got at 7,200, the Sumerians, they claim is the first settlement of the human race, was around 7,200s in BC. Now, before that, of course, they claim of the cavemans and how we were evolving before that. But this was actually when the scientists and archaeologists claimed that man had the first civilization. It was in Mesopotamia region. So as we move through the 4,000 BC, the Hindus had come along. 3,500 BC to 500 BC, Mesopotamia was a strong empire in that region. It was a very strong empire. So they were a huge empire that was big. As you get to the 3,000 BC, the Egyptian Empire was real big. 2,600 BC to 900 AD, it was the Mayans. It's one of the longest lasting empires ever. I mean, that's incredible. They lasted as long or longer than anybody. Of course, they had the knowledge of the calendars and things like that and the stars. Incredibly intelligent people there in South America. So the Mayans were one of the oldest civilizations, one of the oldest with technology such as like mapping and the stars. I mean, it's incredible the knowledge that they had. It's incredible. As you move up, 2500 BC, the Great Pyramid was completed. 1790 to 539 BC, the Babylonian Empire. And we're talking about the empires of how stout and strong that they were. And we know that these empires were all very strong, and a lot of them did last a long time. The Hittite and the Minoan come in around 1600 BC. Around 1500 to 300 BC, the Phoenicians. We've all heard of them. Around 1000 BC, King David was born. Around 550 to 465 AD, 550 BC to 465 AD, the Roman Empire was existence, and was, of course, we know how strong the Roman Empire was. Then we've got right here the BC, the AD. We got the line set up. So when it starts here, as your numbers will go up for BC, they go up for AD that way. So 33, Christ was crucified. Around 79 AD, Pompeii. Around 70, Jerusalem destroyed. 95, Revelations was wrote. Around 570 to 632, Muhammad come on the scene. Lived for that short period of time. Then we go on up here to 1345 to 521, to 1521, the Aztecs. And from 1430 to 1532, the Incas. So, and all this, I'm shortening it up. There's so many more, but these are some of the great big empires that we have read about in history. They're awesome. I mean, it's incredible to think of some of the technology they had during this time. And they had a lot of technology. They had, and I have seen myself personally, the exhibits from Pompeii at what they had got. Man, I've got pictures of things that when I went up to it and looked, and I was looking at it, I said, man, this looks better than what I could buy at Home Depot. It was a water cutoff valve. It was absolutely incredible at what they had made in 79 AD. So technology has been there, and people have gained technology and would probably reach to a certain level, but at around 1850, it seems like it exploded. Technology exploded. Now, why, and just answer me this, why did not the Egyptian Empire, the Mesopotamian, the Roman, as smart as they was, the Mayans and what they had done, as smart as they was, they get to a certain point, it's just like they stop. Well, that takes me back to what I feel like is in the Bibles, because I think with this technology that they have, and it gets to a certain point and stops, I believe it was never time for them. It was not time. It wasn't time for that knowledge to come. Now, I want to go to the book of Daniel and read something that Daniel says in chapter 12. In verse 4, it says, "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." So he's talking about the end of time, but he says people will be running to and fro, and knowledge will be increased. In Matthew chapter 24, he says in verse 15, "When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by the Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand." So we're talking about the end. Jesus then talks and confirms what Daniel was trying to portray and trying to get out about the end of time. So I don't think they had technology. They had knowledge. And if they would have went on, why did these civilizations not continue thriving and went on and the people creating more and more and more? Why? Because it wasn't time. But around 1850, the steam engine come on the scene. What else happened? Oh, this is when it gets really cool and we start seeing some changes. So in around 1850, the steam engine comes in on the scene. And then, you got the early 1900s, you start getting the telephone. And then you started getting AC electricity. You had DC there too that come in, and then you had AC, and there's a big fight over that. And then early 1900s, late 1800s, you had motorcycles, you had cars. They were building these combustible engines. As you moved on up into the 20s, BMW was building a jet engine. And I have to think, it's just amazing at the technology. We're just beginning to learn how to fly, and the technology boomed in a short period of time. Now, this is the part I want you to think about. In all of those generations of civilizations and how brilliant and smart they was, everything stayed the same from like 1850 to the beginning of time. All the farming was done basically the same. All the traveling was done basically the same. You either went by boat, you walked, by camel, mule, horse. That was it. There wasn't no flying machines, and there was no cars. There was no other way to get around but, the boat, by walking, or by horse or camel, mule, wagon, cart. Now you're talking about people that we still can't figure out some of their technology from BC times and how intelligent that they were then. And it stays the same from the beginning of time all the way to 1850, and then all at once, bam. It's just like this technology increased. Isn't that what Daniel said? That's what he said. That's what I read you. And then that's what Jesus was warning of. So just try to capture this in your mind. Everything stayed basically the same until 1850. Even though they had this technology, even though they had this knowledge, it was not their time, but it's our time. It's coming now. Daniel said that people will be going to and fro. We see that more than history has ever shown people moving. We can fly from here to the other side of the world. We can, get on a boat. We can get on an airplane. We can walk. Got cars, motorcycles. Any way that you can imagine, you can travel. And it's amazing. Now they've got, drones. They've got flying drones that you can get on and just take up and fly. And it's incredible where our technology has gotten. So that's why I say that now is the time. And what Daniel was talking about and what Jesus was talking about, it could not have happened in the first century. So I've got to go through and look at some of the verses to make all this complete, okay? All right, Matthew chapter 24. So I will go back and forth through some things for you to think about. He says, "For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows, and they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake." Now people will say, well, all that happened in the first century. Well, it did. But it's slowly happening right now at a very high rate of speed, because everything that seems like that is good has been turned bad, and everything that's bad has been turned good. So you can be a homosexual abortionist, and they get praised. But if you're a Christian, you're a hated, racist, every time you turn around. So that's just going to advance and get even worse. So there you go. Wars and rumors of wars. We've always had wars and rumors of wars, but think about this. This is the part I want you to think about. So would have a war, a couple hundred years ago, a couple hundred years before that, a couple hundred years before that, a couple hundred years for that. But look how they advanced. So in 1850 or 1860 to 1864, we had the Civil War. When was the next war? Really, the next big war was, several years later, 1914, with World War I. Then coming in with 1941-42 was World War II. And then the Korean War come in the 50s. Ooh, that was like really a jump there. And then from the 50s, we went into the 60s and went straight into Vietnam. And then in the 70s, really it has been a continuous conflict from the 70s, what I remember of the Ayatollah of Iran. It's just never stopped. We've been over there constantly. It's been back and forth. It's like every year we're in a war. So we're in more wars now. The wars and rumors of wars count more now than ever has in history. They'd have one every couple hundred years or something. But we're having them like every year. We don't know from month to month if we're fixing to get in a war. This wars and rumors of wars means more now than it has ever. So don't tell me that we've always had that. No, it's advanced more. Pay attention and look at your history. I mean, it's right there in front of you. So then we go from that. So for the people that argue with me over this, we're going to talk about now a little bit of the technology with the old world civilization. So he says in Matthew chapter 4, verse 14, and they say, well, all this has already happened. But listen, he says, and the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, then shall the end come. Well, the first century, I don't think everybody in the world had heard the gospel. But the technology today has created the ability for everybody in the world to hear the gospel. Didn't have that in the first century. So don't tell me, we can argue about this. I'm fixing to get another verse, the big verse about it. Don't tell me that all this has already happened. There's things here that you can't answer. The whole world had to know. So if the whole world had to know before the end come, it was impossible in the first century. But today it's possible. From 1850 up, it's been possible. That's why I say I think we're living in the last days. All right. Now, I'm going to read about the coming of Jesus. If this has already happened, this would have been something I think would have been wrote down historically, and would have been told about, but they claim all this has already happened. So many people do. So let's read what happens here. Verse 29, the same of Matthew chapter 24, says, immediately after the tribulations of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars fell from the heavens, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens, and shall all the tribes of the earth mourn. They shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and glory, and he shall send his angels with the sound of a trumpet. And they shall gather together the elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. That seems like something big enough that a lot of people would have wrote about, but I never seen that. And that's never spoken of throughout the whole Bible. So, it's spoken of that it's coming, but not that it already happened. So I'm just saying that there's so many things that's lining up for today. Back when we were talking and I said there'll be kingdom against kingdom and these wars and rumors of wars. What does he say after that? Famines and pestilences. Now, the famines, we don't quite see that right now, but I think we will. But the pestilences, that's diseases. And I can't even begin to tell you what you know about that as much as I do. There's more diseases out there than we could ever even possibly imagine. More now, I believe, than there was in the first century. More now than I believe there has ever been in the history of man. Right now. Because why? Not because of the diseases that have come naturally on this earth. Is because they're sitting down at the CDC and in China and all these other places making diseases. So we have more than we've ever had in history because they're creating them now. They're not good enough to just leave well enough alone and say that we've got enough diseases. Let's just try to get a cure for them. Let's make some more. That's what they're doing now. So we're in the end. This is a key verse that I'm going to give you, and this will be the last three verses that I'm going to read to you right here. Okay, he says this, verily, in verse 34, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Now, this is Jesus speaking. Did he lie? No, he did not lie, because you need to listen to what he says next. But a lot of people take that one verse and say, all this has already happened just because of that one verse. But listen closely and put it together, okay? Verse 35, he says this, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. Oh, his words, yes. But he says then in verse 36, but, this is Jesus saying, but, of that day and hour knoweth no man, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Even Jesus didn't even know. Now, Jesus was going probably on what he was seeing or thinking that all this is going to happen real quick. All this is going to happen like right now after he's crucified. But he says, but of that hour and day, no one knows. Only the Father. Jesus didn't know. Was Jesus lying about what he was saying? No, he wasn't lying. He just didn't know. And then we take his words and say that, well, you're wrong, Jesus. Well, no, not really. Jesus wasn't wrong. There's a lot you can take from this and what he's saying. He's coming to the end of his life. And he's wanting something to happen right here for everybody. What do we read in Corinthians? That today is the day of salvation. What do we read all through the Bible? That there's an urgency to salvation and being close to God. So every day should be lived as if it was going to be your last. That's kind of what we talked about Wednesday, why I'm so scared. I want everybody to be a good steward of themselves and be prepared to meet your God, because I believe with all my heart, yes, we are in the end days. Yes, you will start to be getting persecuted. You know, whether or not they try to make this chip and try to embed it in people, I'm not going to take it. That's going to create me to be going against the laws of the land. But that's what I had said Wednesday night. The laws of the land, our government has created the laws of the land. They've already went against God's laws by making homosexuality, marriage right, the abortion thing, just on and on and on. So that kind of makes their laws null and void to me. I'm not under the government's law. I'm under God's law and God's law only. That's who I'll always be under. So yes, it's going to be a fight. I think it's coming. I think them trying to create the pestilences, the diseases, I think they will try to create the famine by you not being able to buy your food unless you've got this mark that they're wanting to put on it. Hey, look, I'm going to tell you this. People can say, well, this is not real, it's not true, it's just advanced society. But it's advanced society that they didn't have in the first century. We've moved up. And I'm talking about back in 1995, there was a report, and they were using these tracking devices on people. It was 1/800 smaller than human hair. They was using it in Virginia. And they was using it on prisoners in case they were to escape. So they could inject it through a hypodermic needle, and they used it on prisoners. Oh, it was a great thing. But, you know, they got a lot of flack about it, you know, because it kind of went against personal rights. People had to actually agree to doing it. So now we have people in Washington State, other parts of the globe, but Washington State, we have people in Colorado that has taken this new mark. Well, they're able to open and shut doors. They were doing it down in Mexico 5 years ago. They could go into records departments. Now, oh, this is great. So now it's identity just to you. Man, I'm telling you, this is coming, but this is not stuff that they had in the first century. This is not any kind of mark that was talked about from the first century, that Nero had created this type of society. That was not in existence to what we are in comparison to what we're seeing today. Today, yes, we are in the last days. I believe that with all my heart. But as I said Wednesday night, be a good steward over yourself. I don't want anyone to go to hell. I do want to show you something right here. Let me show you where we're getting to. Because science and everything's trying to change everything. So, this is BC. This is AD. What does BC and AD stand for? BC, it means before Christ, right? AD is Anno Domini. That is Latin for the year of our Lord. That sounds great, don't it? Anno Domini, the year of our Lord. Well, our modern society don't like that. So you go on the internet right now and you start looking up history and historical things from BC and AD times, and what you'll see is they've changed it. And that's not on every site, but you'll see it on most of them. BC has been changed to BCE, means before Common Era. AD now means after. AD is now CE, which means Common Era. So you have Common Era and before Common Era. They wanted to take the whole before Christ and the year of our Lord out. It's been going on more in the past few years than has ever we've seen in the past 2,000 years. That's what I'm trying to say. That, you know, all of this, the persecution is like fixing to get worse. You need to be prepared. You need to get your friends prepared. It's like I said Wednesday night. I don't even want Hitler to go to hell. I don't want Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden. I don't want nobody to go to hell. I fear what kind of judgment God has created and when he sends people to hell and when God will be the only judge of us, but when God makes that decision, there'll be many that will enter therein. This is the road is wide, and it's nearer to God. Well, you know, we've got to be living a life for God. We can't just be living however we want to. But I do this and try to warn people. I think it's coming now quicker than ever. I may not live to see the end. You know, it may be in the next 5 years. The way it looks right now, the way things is going, this whole Mark thing's coming up by next year. All this stuff's coming on pretty quick. I don't know. And it's going to start getting nasty then. But there again, too, what if I have a heart attack before then? See, I should have been prepared. That's where you need to understand. You need to understand. Don't be looking for the end of time. Be ready for the end of your time. Like now. Make sure that you're ready. Don't be looking for this. It's neat. We can go through, we can see these things. I can bring these scriptures up. People can argue about this, but no one knows. Only the Father. Only God. Jesus didn't even know. Only God knows. So we don't know. You need to be prepared for your end of time. You leaving this world. Making sure that you are prepared to meet your God. It's coming, and it's following the Bible perfectly. There's no other scripture in the world from any other religion that matches what has happened in the world through historical data, scientific data, and just word for word. It's just amazing what the Bible brings up. And I wanted to bring that point in of how real this Bible is. But I want you to understand, no one's going to know. There's no reason that we need to worry about the end of time. What you need to worry about is the end of your time. I think it's coming quick. I really do. God bless you. I get into some more things, and I don't want to keep you like all day or nothing, but because I could talk all day long. But I want you to understand, for you to be prepared, because no matter what, whether it is when he comes back in flaming vengeance through the clouds, or you leave this earth, we are going to be in judgment in the eyes of God one day. And we will be judged on our life and what we've done and how we have been and lived our lives on this earth. That's what you need to be more concerned about. As we talked about Wednesday night, be a good steward over what God has given you. And the most important thing that God has given you is your life. Be a good steward over that. And give God praise and glory every day. Thank you so much for watching. There's so many on here. I don't never mention no names because I'm afraid I'll miss somebody. But God bless everybody for watching. I sure appreciate it. And, if you like the lesson, pass it on. Maybe we can encourage some other people to try to straighten their life up, live right, and get ready because Jesus is coming back soon. God bless you and I love you.